Okay. So I'll just reiterate whatever we spoke about, just so that the people who would be listening to this recorded lecture could also make sense of. Um, so we have, so when we talk of landscapes, it's important to understand that it's not just about, a few plants in a planter outside in your garden, or it's not just about beautifying a space, but landscape actually encompasses something much more vast. So as a landscape architect, or from the perspective of an architect, when you speak of landscape architecture, it's important to understand that almost all the design that happens outside your built envelope comes under the purview of landscape architecture. Now, I stand corrected in that statement as well, because it's important to understand that it's not just whatever is designed outside the building, but if there is a component of any of this, or of a hardscape or a softscape, or a natural entity which is essentially brought in within the building, usually landscape architects are involved in that aspect as well. Now, let's say, for example, a small courtyard. Designing a courtyard, it's important to understand that, that there is a certain sense of design that's involved in it. Or even if there's a green wall. Do all of you know what a green wall is? Okay, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what a green wall is. So a green wall is essentially um, a live arrangement on a wall wherein you have plants which are, kind of planted in these small geotextile pockets, and you may have seen it in some malls, or in some hotels, or in some of those projects. So it's a live wall, basically a wall that breathes, and and there are plants on it. It's like a vertical garden, in simple terms. So landscape, the idea of landscape architecture, yeah, I like vertical gardens, exactly. Yeah. So, the idea of landscape architecture kind of spans across different scales. It could start from a small green wall to a small set of, arrangement of plants within a courtyard to, let's say, a whole city. You design an entire city, so you understand what the topography of the land is. You know the contours, and then you start designing all of it. So, in a nutshell, if I have to kind of start introducing landscape to you, I would rather, use a simpler terms of, of understanding land, water, and air. Now, before you design a building, it's important to understand your site, like how I explained earlier. So I'm just reiterating. That's why I'm going fast. So you kind of look at the topography of the land. Okay, topography essentially means the lay of the land. The way the land is laid out. Like for example, in your second semester projects, you had contoured sites. You had sites which had which had level differences. So, in order for us humans to understand what level differences are in a real site, we essentially, what we do is we join these points which are of the same height or of the same elevation. Elevation in landscape does not mean a facade of a building, but it means the height from a ground. You may have seen elevation maps, na? In atlases you would have seen elevation maps. Elevation maps basically look at, how tall mountains are, how deep the ocean floor is, those are elevation maps. So essentially what we do is, we in contours we basically draw out these imaginary lines that join all the points of that land at the same level, and those imaginary lines are what we call as contours. I mean, in reality, are they contours? There aren't. Like, it's when we make a model, like when we make a Ethaflex or a thermocol model, or any other material. Yeah, we shouldn't use thermocol anymore. So any of those materials, so you have, you basically make them as stacks, right? You stick them as stacks. So it kind of reminds you of those terraced fields, like Chinese or Balinese terraced paddy fields, right? But in reality, that's just our understanding, or we just draw it out that way so that we understand how these things work. But it's basically a smoothened out, topography which is there. So the first thing is to understand the topography. That's something that we'll do, to work with levels, so that you don't have to kind of make a model, carve out things, and then keep experimenting. That does this work? Does that work? You don't have to do that anymore. So intuitively, when you look at a plan which is contoured, intuitively when you look at it, your contours would start to pop up in front of your eyes. So that is the kind of understanding that you should ideally have when you look at a contour drawing. That's something we'll do. Then we look at understanding what the land is. So we look at geology and geomorphology. It may be a bit scientific. We don't really need to go into the scientific details of it because we are not, kind of talking about the chemical or the physical properties of it. But we are designing these we're designing our building, we are designing our landscape, we are kind of putting in our project onto that land. So we need to understand how it works. So that's something that we would look at. We would look at different types of soils. We would understand, what are those entities or those physical properties or those chemical properties that we need to understand before we design with soils. Then we would of course look at plants. So like I told you, plants are probably the most easily recognized entities, when you talk of landscape. So it's important for us to understand that not all plants grow everywhere, and that's a general mistake which most architects who haven't understood landscape do it. Because when you make a SketchUp 3D and when you take it to Lumion and when you render it, you have the same plant palette, whether you're sitting in New York and working, or whether you're sitting in Bombay and working, or whether you're sitting in, Rajasthan and working. You have the same plant palette. You have the same, plasticky trees with pink flowers or, red flowers or yellow flowers, and you just go and put them in. Go for your client meeting, you show it to your clients, they're very happy, and then they'll say, "हाँ, मुझे बहुत पसंद आया," like वो building नहीं देखते शायद, they would say, "तो those yellow flowering plants, we need them, we need them." And then later on, when you actually go to the plant nursery, or when you call in a landscape architect to, kind of do the project, then you'll get a shock that, there is no such plant which, kind of flowers profusely, which is attuned to that particular climatic zone. So it's a common mistake which designers make. And so, it's important for us to understand that plants are live material, and, and every area, like be it Bombay, be it, Madhya Pradesh, or be it any of these biogeoclimatic zones, every area has a list of plants which are native to that area. Now, all native plants may not be aesthetically preferred, or all native plants may not be conducive to be used in a project. Like, for example, there is a plant called Karonda. I don't know if you know Karonda, but it grows in Maharashtra quite a lot near the rivers. It's a shrubby kind of a plant, very beautiful waxy leaves, but it's got thorns in it. So, if you're designing a nursery school, maybe Karonda may not be the best plant to kind of plant there. It is native. It needs very little maintenance. It looks beautiful. It's green throughout the year. But why do I say it may not be the most conducive plant to grow there? Is because it's got thorns. And it's quite possible that the children might bruise themselves against it. So you have to be very careful about what you plant. Or there are some plants which look beautiful, which flower profusely, and which have these beautiful, fruits that kind of come in. Not edible, but some of them may be poisonous. So, you need to be very, very careful. There are other plants which may look beautiful. I mean, I can show it to you, but those trigger severe allergy reactions to some people. So if you never know who your clients are, you never know how, human bodies react with plants. So it's important for us to understand that aspect of it. That's a toxicology aspect of it. But it's also important for us to understand how do plants grow up. So unlike like what I told you, a 3D of a building as opposed to a real building, where it's pretty much easy to match the form, pretty much easy to match the textures, match the colors. In landscape, there is always a sense of uncertainty. You never know how does a tree kind of grow up to be. Whether it will branch from the base, or whether it will grow as one trunk and then branch. You can never predict. But because we've been using plants for so long, we know the growth habits of these plants. They're called growth habits. We kind of understand that, okay, if it's a mango tree, there is a certain way that tree would be. If it's a coconut palm, a coconut palm can't grow in any other shape other than the fact that there is one stem and then there is a bunch of leaves, a rosette of leaves that happen on the top. But whether it grows straight or whether it grows teda or whether it does a disco is something that the tree decides for itself. And the tree doesn't decide for itself. It basically grows in a way where it gets sunlight. So if you have a building on the side of your plot which casts a shadow, a perpetual shadow in your site, you need to be careful because many of those plants that you think may grow in that garden may not even grow. So you have to change the set of species that you're using. So essentially, understanding plants is a very, very important part of landscape. But again, that is a smaller aspect of it. So as architecture students, we may not really go into the depths of it or the details of it. So, but at least you'll be sensitized enough to understand. Okay, there are these things. Uh, there's a difference between a native plant and an invasive plant or an exotic plant. So you need to understand what these are. We do that bit. So once you understand your soft scale, it's also important to understand that we share our earth. I mean, this is something that I think even in your first EVS class, we spoke about, that we share our earth with all other species. There are plants, there are all sorts of animals around, but we hardly speak about them in architecture. So do we ever design a building or a garden with, keeping in mind, that there are birds that would come in or there are butterflies that would come in? Or, if it's not a small plot, but if it's a large plot, let's say, you're designing something in Almora, there's this huge one side of a whole mountain where you've been asked to kind of design an extension to the city. Would you actually leave spaces where, the snakes could kind of live, freely, or would you actually leave spaces where, the rodents, could kind of, or the squirrels could kind of move across, so there are these things. And how do you decide which animals are to be provided for and which animals are considered a pest, so they have to be controlled? And how do you kind of, it's a very thin line that we kind of, move on as architects or as landscape architects, or eventually in your next year when you'll be doing urban design, you'll understand the reason why I'm harping on these things, because now is the time. Third year is a very crucial time. Now is the time when you start thinking beyond just a building and start looking at the city. So you are kind of moving scales. So this year is extremely crucial for you to understand all these aspects, and allied design will kind of help you in finding that bridge between looking at a building as opposed to looking at a whole urban scape or a rural scape. So looking at the entire landscape. So we have to design for animals and for the other species as well. So how do you kind of tacitly kind of include it in your designs? That is another aspect. Then how do you design keeping in mind the climate or the weather of a place? So the seasons of a place. So climatic design is something that you've been learning since your first year of architecture in your EVS. But now we kind of broaden the scope of it. And now we start looking at what can our open spaces do to your buildings, and how can you kind of plan for them, keeping in mind that, your design of your building actually complements the resources which are available for you outside. How do you kind of integrate them? Then, of course, if it's an urban project or a rural project, there are a lot of these anthropogenic layers which we put onto a project. Now, what do you mean by anthropogenic layers? Like Bhari Shabd. Right? So, anthropogenic layers, in very simple terms, essentially mean, entities which are basically generated by us humans. Like, for example, before you start with a project, you need to know where is a road, where are the service lines. You need to know, if it's a public building, you need to understand, like where is the bus stop or where is the nearest exit from the railway station, so that you have a large plot. So I'm not talking of a small house anymore. I'm talking of larger projects. So let's say your project is near the Virar station, so, and you have multiple entrances to your project, and so would you then design your main entrance in a way wherein people who are getting down from the train can walk in easily? Or would you say, oh, this road is not so beautiful, so I have a more beautiful looking road at the back, so I want to turn my building around and I want to kind of put my entrance there, which essentially means people have to come out and walk like half a kilometer on the road and then enter from the other side. So would you do that, or would you say, no, I'd rather place my forecourt on the side because that's more conducive, I've got more space there. But I would rather leave a pedestrian connection, for people who are coming in from, the bus stop or the nearest railway station to come in. So all these considerations, like how does your building sit within the larger network of the city? That is another understanding that we need to have. So I'm consciously talking in very simple terms and not using difficult terms because I want you guys to follow the lecture, and So if you find that all this seems extremely simplistic, then well and good. I mean, that's the point, it has to kind of connect to you. But when we go through each and every lecture and when we, kind of start getting into the design project or, the hands-on work that we would do in our studios, you will understand the complexities of these. Okay, so I'm just giving you extremely simple examples right now because I want you to be with me on this. Okay. So yeah, so all these anthropogenic layers, and then we look at land use, we look at all the other aspects which you're probably familiar with, bylaws, so when you deal with landscape architecture, one extremely important aspect is to understand that landscape design and a building design are not two separate things. And there is no different way in which you do landscape design, which is different from a building. There are different ways in which you enter a site, you intervene with these entities, but designing a landscape or planning for a landscape is actually integrated within designing or planning for a building. It's essentially you scale out. So from now on, when you design a building, you don't really design the interior spaces and then you just put a building, and then it's like, like you make an idli somewhere at home and then you come and place it on a plate. Don't do that bit, So what you do is from now on, when you design a building, design it with the site, design it with the landscape. So you kind of zoom out, look at the entities, and then you decide that within your plot, where do you want to actually place a building. There are extremely scientific ways which guide you, through site planning techniques that you would know. So it's very different from the kind of sites that you've dealt with, where you have a 3,000 square meter site and you have a 1,500 building. So there isn't much room to play with. But I'm talking of much larger sites. Like you have, let's say, a project like JVPD scheme, like a whole area of, acres and acres of land, and then you are asked to place a building in it. Or like IIT Bombay, you have a huge site and you have to just place a small block or a series of blocks. How do you start? How do you say, okay, here is where my block comes in and not there? So you basically read the lay of the land. You look at the trees, you look at how the water flows. So you understand all these. So that's another thing that I didn't speak about is hydrology. So between topography, geology, vegetation, all of it, there is also hydrology. You need to understand how does the water flow in your site. And you may ask, मेरे side में तो water body नहीं है. फिर why does Sandeep say, how does water flow? बारिश होती है ना? It rains, right? So when it rains, there is a certain way that the lay of the land dictates how the water kind of flows in. So you need to understand not all lands can be built upon. And it's very important for us to understand this concept. Or even if there is a dearth of land and you need to kind of utilize and build on certain areas which ideally should not be built, there are ways in which you can build wherein you can be sensitive to the site, the natural processes. So what are natural processes? Natural processes are what happens all around when I'm speaking to you, the hawa chal rahi hai, there is moisture on the ground, which is, there is moisture outside. It's drying up because the sun is getting, the heat is getting warmer and warmer. The rain that fell in the soil yesterday night, that's evaporating. The leaves are kind of opening right now, and some of them are actually closing because, the sunlight is kind of falling on it directly. The flowers are wilting. The earth, the tectonic plates of our earth, they are actually moving. Even though we feel we are static, actually there are all these natural processes which are in motion right now, even though we don't really see it. So we can still design a building which actually responds to all these natural processes, and and that's how like you do a good design. So through this allied design course, we can actually look at all these aspects. And so there are natural layers, there are anthropogenic layers. You kind of analyze them, you read them, and then you start designing a building. First and foremost, understand that landscape architecture and building architecture are not two different things. They are essentially an extension of the same, so one is an extension of the other. So you kind of zoom out and then you design, then you zoom in, then you do things. And when you do the micro designing of these smaller spaces that you've carved out, then your landscape design then starts responding to the building. So your building responds to the larger landscape, your landscape design responds to the immediate context. So essentially it's all intermixed. But just because it's taught by two different sets of faculty members and it's considered as two different subjects, do not be fooled that that there are two different things. They are actually the same. It's just that we're dealing with a much larger palette of things in landscape. So obviously, you need to have a little bit of scientific understanding. You need to, kind of keep your mind open. It's not just about fitting in programs into, created spaces. But having said that, just like in architecture, we are dealing with scale. We are dealing with spaces. We are dealing with textures. We are dealing with, usable areas. We're dealing with programs. So just like how you have building programs, like you have a reception and you have, a meeting room and you have a corridor and you have all of these, just the same in landscape. You may not have these rooms, but you do have a landscape program. You would have an entrance area. You would have, circulation paths which are there. You would have parking lots. You would have courtyards. You would have places for people to sit, interact. So all these entities would still be there in landscape. But unfortunately, we try to miss out on all of this. And even after landscape architecture, when college, but when I go as a jury member to other colleges and when I see their work, in their thesis and all, I kind of wonder that, that what did they actually learn in their allied design semester or in their landscape semester? Because many of them just think only about the building and then they just leave it at that. But trust me, it's a far, far, far more exciting experience if you actually design your building along with all of this in place. So that's something that we'll explore and we'll kind of learn, in the next 2 semesters. Okay, and now regarding the class. So I'll quickly tell you about the class and then I'll open it up for discussion or, we can take it up from there. So regarding the class, the idea is that, we are kind of relooking at the syllabus. So we've had multiple iterations that we tried to work out last year, with your senior batch. And I think now we know, that what are the essential skills that, that you guys really need for your architectural design as opposed to, the requirements of a subject. So that's something that we would be looking at. The idea is not to tax you with a lot of work. Okay, the idea is to kind of sensitize you. The idea is to get you to understand how landscape works and how can you be more sensitive in your approach towards designing and how can you integrate these skills that you learn into your architectural design. So how can you understand the process of designing with the landscape in mind? And even if, let's say all of you kind of imbibe these 3 aspects, I would say that, the course was successful. So since this is a first class and since we are beginning with the lecture, I think, we'll start. I'll end my monologue right here, and then we can start with it. So from next class onwards, I'll kind of show you different projects or presentations wherein you can understand the possibilities of what landscape architecture could do. I'll probably format it, and I'll probably send some readings across to you. So I'll ask your CRs for your email IDs, and then so what I can do is I can send you interesting reads or interesting clips of movies, because I understand, reading is difficult for many of you. So I mean, we can have a whole varied set of inputs wherein I would request you to kind of go through it, even though I understand that many of you may not be in a position to kind of access internet all the time. So it'll be interesting. I mean, it will not be taxing for you. I mean, I'm sure if you're interested, you'll start looking at it. So we start with it. We look at the lectures so that by the time the college reopens, you may have had a fair enough idea of what we are going to look at. And then during our allied design classes, we'll have S-keys or we'll have, these interventions that whatever we've learned in that lecture classes, maybe what you can do is you can actually, kind of draw it out for yourself or, make it with your hands, or kind of explore within the studio. And, we'll keep it to the studio if we can help it, so that the workload is minimized. And the kind of work that we do is meaningful. So when I say meaningful, what I mean is, it kind of helps you with your future trajectory of being an architect, of understanding built and unbuilt spaces. And also it helps, it strengthen your understanding of architectural design, strengthen your understanding of, of dealing with, let's say, the allied subjects of like services in a landscape, or looking at structures, like how do you kind of incorporate what you learn in structures within landscape? How do you design with, natural elements and all of it? So with that, I'll end my lecture for today. So I'll pause the recording and I'll open the class for discussion. If you guys want to ask any questions or any of it, The reason I'm pausing the recording is because I'm not sure if people would actually like to listen to a 1.5 hour recording as opposed to a class, which is probably more important. Okay, now how do I pause the recording?